Okay, fantastic. I can see myself, I can hear myself. Perfect. Okay, cool. Anyways, welcome. Welcome, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. This is Joshua Ncube. For those of you who don't know who I am, basically stand-up comedian, celebrity chef, entrepreneur, social media consultant, photographer, husband, basically creative of sorts. I think I maybe should start by giving you a background about myself. I think that's going to be very important. So essentially, I'm a creative. So I utilize a number of tools in terms of expressing certain concepts that I need to bring across. Comedy happens to be the most prominent one that people have known me for, but there's other people in the industry who have known me for my work in television production, events, doing a lot of consultancy and running my own advertising agency. This is prior to doing stand-up comedy. I also happen to be a celebrity chef. To explain that, my father was a comedian, and my mom, when I say was, he's late. He was a comedian, so he used to perform comedy at weddings way before people even knew there was anything to do with like a comedy circuit in Africa. My dad was already doing this. So I was generally brought up around comedy, but I used it within an advertising context in terms of writing copy for adverts, coming up with concepts, because that's essentially what comedy is. And I will explain further within this particular talk that I'm doing. My mother is a home economics lecturer, retired from Belvedere Teachers College. So that's where the cooking came from. So my mom, fashion and fabrics, cooking. So I actually wanted to be a fashion designer when I was young. I do know how to sew, to knit, to crochet, and also invariably I know how to cook. So what has brought me here? What has brought me here is Zimbabwe is at a very interesting time where we've obviously gone through 37 years of misrule. And we're going through a very dodgy period right now of great uncertainty. And this has kind of polarized the country. But I want us to shift our focus a little bit from the politics, because I think we discussed the politics a little bit too much, not actually understanding the context. So I'm hoping that the people I'm speaking to are people that are hoping to get into business, that are hoping to become investors, or they're hoping to grow their lives in a particular way. I'm not really speaking to the pessimists. I'm not speaking to the haters. I'm not speaking to the closed-minded. Essentially what it is today my target market is just, for example, there's a reason why there's only 1,200 billionaires in the world. That's because the ratio of billionaires to the rest of the population is 1 to 7 million. So essentially that means that in Zimbabwe, by virtue of our population being between 12 and 15 million, we only have enough room for 1 or 2 billionaires, which means the rest of us don't have billionaire mentality. So I might fall into that category. So that's not to say that it's everybody. So I'm trying to get you guys into kind of billionaire mentality, so you can understand certain things like governments don't matter. I'm not saying you shouldn't vote. This is not a political forum. This is not what I'm going to be discussing. But I want you to understand how you can engage with the economy in whatever way it's actually going by being a proactive citizen. So for people who don't know who I am, Colin Ngumela, I have to explain this because this is the exact context of what I'm doing. If I don't explain that, then you're not going to understand anything else that I'm talking about. So first and foremost, what you actually have to understand is what I'm trying to teach you today is about how to be an active citizen. You need to understand that the power is actually in your own hands to become great. It's not the politicians that put that power in your hands. It's in fact yourself. So I'll give you an example. So a person like me in any other country, people would have already recognized, and the government would have said, oh, we like this guy, Carl, he's marketing the country, so we'll make him a tourism ambassador. We'll allocate resources and make sure that he reaches the right clientele that we need to actually get. But in fact, that didn't happen. So I used to spend a lot of my time trying to engage with government, feeling that they needed to validate the stuff that I was doing. In fact, I wasn't even allowed to perform comedy because of the fact that we had this political situation in Zimbabwe. And so I had to look at what it is that I could offer the Zimbabwean population in order for me to create a monetized business out of comedy. So I didn't just jump onto a stage. I remembered the first time I went on stage, I performed, I had to sit down with my team and we had to craft a 10-year plan on exactly how we saw comedy working, because I'd worked in the arts sector before, and I know there's an incubation period for every artist, which is about 10 years of you sort of slaving away and people sort of feeling, why isn't this person making it? And then eventually it just sort of happens. So you look at people like Danai Gurira. People might think, oh, it's just sort of happened because she's on Walking Dead and now she's on Avengers and she's on Black Panther. But there was a amount of time that she put in to her craft. And it's that 10-year thing that I want to actually teach you today, that the power is actually in your hands to actually incubate the best kind of product that you're going to hatch for tomorrow. So essentially, for me, I thought, the Zimbabwean population were going to accept what I'm doing, the government were going to accept, but I faced a lot of resistance. But then I had to sit down and figure out, where was comedy actually working and how could I bring about a narrative that the rest of the world could understand? And I realized I needed to travel. So I needed to go around the world, in fact. And so you'll notice that even in my comedy, my business plan is in my comedy. So like in all of my shows, I start off by saying, good evening, my name is Ncube, and I'm in fact the biggest Zimbabwean stand-up comedian in the world, which normally attracts a lot of laughter from foreigners because obviously like, what am I comparing myself to? And then the second thing that I say is that stand-up comedy has taken me to over 37 cities around the world. And then they give me applause, and then I say 36 of those cities are in Zimbabwe. Now, essentially what I'm doing there is I'm already planting in people's minds that if you think of Zimbabwe comedy, the name Carl Joshua Ncube is what's going to stand out. It doesn't matter what Zimbabweans think about me. The actual truth of the matter is that externally, the people who are actually paying for me to do what I do, because like generally what I do is like if I do a show in say Bulawayo, for example, people will normally complain, $10, who does he think he is, and what. So people complain. Whereas, I've just done a show in China where the organizers at the Kung Fu Comedy Club were getting so many inquiries they even increased the price of the tickets. There weren't even any complaints and the show sold out. Right? So as a business, you need to understand who your target market is. Your customer is the person that's willing to support and pay for your product or service. So for example, you'll notice that I get very short with people online because they, let's say, for example, they think they have relevance to tell me certain things. But listen, they're not my customers. They're not my customers. They're people that come on my wall to find relevance. They're not there. They've never supported me. I can measure the matrix. I know the people who come to my shows. I keep a database, actually. If you ask a lot of people that have come to my shows, I'm very specific on understanding my fans, most importantly. The rest of the people that are there, they're not my customers, so I shouldn't worry about them. So people often say stuff to me, and they say stuff like, Carl, but you should do skits because people are doing skits, they're getting more views than you. And I'm like, yeah, they're getting views, but that's not money. Views don't mean money. Likes don't mean money. For me, at the end of the day, I might have less people that are on my profile, but I have a much higher conversion rate. In fact, I've got such high value clients that I don't even call them fans. I call them investors. These are people that have added so much value to my career. So this is just explaining why I'm going to be talking to you about tourism and the tourism model. So I've spent the last 7 years engineering my comedy so that it is specific to tourists, because I realized that every time when I'm doing my shows, I've literally converted people and they visited Zimbabwe. Now that's on a small level. Imagine if the government had actually engaged me and I would have gone to the trade expos and stuff like that and set up a stand. I could give people proper context. They could understand the politics, but also understand that Zimbabwe is a safe country. Now, the biggest challenge that we have here is that, let me give you an example. And again, like I said, the reason why I mention politics is that I'm not trying to convince you to follow a particular political agenda. I want you to follow a business agenda. So for example, we are seeing the president walking around and he's wearing a scarf, and obviously a lot of us are making fun of the scarf and whatever it is. Some hate it, some love the scarf or whatever. But remember, I'm a stand-up comedian. Online, my clientele are people that I'm trying to attract to Zimbabwe. So I'm very careful about the image that I put out there. I'm not endorsing any political party or president or candidate. But here's what happens. I've got a friend of mine who said, who asked me, what is this scarf all about? And funnily, do you know what I said to him? I said, well, the president is wearing a flyer around his neck, because when he walks into a room, people say to him, oh, nice scarf, Mr. President. What is this all about? And he says, no, the green is for our natural resources. We'll discuss that a little bit. We'll have a meeting about that. The yellow is the mineral resources. I'm sure I let you know about the diamond, platinum, coal and stuff like that you're already putting some money into. The red is showing you the tumultuous past that we've had in our country. Very controversial, but people have overcome it by huge sacrifice and so on. And we want you to understand the context of the fact that Zimbabweans are going to continue resolving their issues regardless. So it doesn't mean that business is going to stop. And also, the black then represents the Zimbabwean population. Our people are warm. They're particularly amazing, which is why we put the white next to the black, which represents peace. Zimbabwe is a peaceful country, and the bird just shows that our country is steeped in very rich traditions and culture. Now, so I said this jokingly, right? But it ended up turning into a discussion about a consortium of people from Dubai who wanted to understand more about the country, because they're working on an MBA project, and so they ended up, because I get involved with a lot of people who are doing research projects. I always lend my knowledge, my context to people that are doing their studies. And so this has now ended up in a group of people that are actually working on a thesis, or they're working on a dissertation that is to do with Zimbabwe, and a lot of their findings are to do with interviews that I put them in touch with different people that they could speak to, who I felt would give them the right context about Zimbabwe. Why am I mentioning this? It's very important for you to understand that a brand ambassador is not a person who just stands around and takes pretty pictures when they're called by ZTA or the government. No, brand ambassador is a person who's going to take on the initiative of actually selling the country. So I see myself as, I'm not running for office. Like I tell the joke that I'm not running for office because I already have an office. What this essentially means is that I've basically taken everything that's good about Zimbabwe, everything that I think is marketable about Zimbabwe, and that's what I talk about on my platform. And this is why I fight violently online about it, because I am trying to sell an image of Zimbabwe. Yes, Kululi Ndlovu, they missed the color about corruption, but listen, go and watch the Zuckerberg interview, and you realize that we're not the only corrupt country in the world. So yes, I can dwell talking about corruption, but I can also talk about the fact that we've got intelligent people. I mean, I can leave you to talk about corruption. You can spend your whole day doing that, but I would rather talk about things that I'm actually able to sell. Anyway, moving along, I'm going to actually just take you through so you can understand my psyche when I'm actually doing a lot of things, like we moved to Victoria Falls, which I see as a place where artists need to be living at because of the international airports. Right now, I don't know if you guys are even aware, but that Harare International Airport might actually die soon, because what is actually going to be happening is that more airlines are coming directly to Victoria Falls, and then people are connecting to either Bulawayo or Harare. So what's going to happen is that you're going to get less international traffic going to Harare, because people would rather fly into Victoria Falls because we're basically more competitive. We've got a better airport, we've got better services. Plus, we happen to have Victoria Falls, by the way, and we have Hwange National Park, and we have so many amazing things that are happening here that you may not get in Harare or Bulawayo. So definitely Victoria Falls is the place to actually be in. So this brings me to my tourism manifesto. Okay, so I just wrote it for you guys a little bit so you can understand. So this is just a manifesto. I plan everything. Essentially, I don't really look at problems the way other people look at problems. I always say, if I never complain about something I can't create a business model out of. So while people are busy complaining, I'm busy looking at the problems you're complaining about and seeing solutions that I can make money from. So this manifesto is based on a lot of things that I'm going to be setting up in Victoria Falls. Now, they don't necessarily mean that I will be doing them, but essentially, I imagine like I'm acting like a minister. So I'm going to harness the right kind of skills base and convince people to get into particular areas. First place that I'm looking at is establishing a customer first charter. If you look on Facebook, you'll notice that I open up a lot of Facebook pages, and these are projects that I'm actually going to be working on. So the customer first charter has to do with working on a customer service model, not only for Victoria Falls, but where people can actually actively complain about the problems that they're getting from service providers. So one of the things that has happened in Zimbabwe is that you've been screwed over by politicians, but you've actually been screwed over more by the corporates, right? So the corporates they're giving you a raw deal and stuff like that. Want to give you a platform where you're able to complain. But we're using this for research in order to come up with solutions for them. So we will help them with customer service models, training, consultancy, advocacy, and also research. So that's going to be very important because Victoria Falls is a service center in the country. So it's very important that our customer services are always going to be on point. So I'm using Victoria Falls as a model for this particular project in order to make sure that our customer service is on point, because we've got a huge resource in terms of people, but sometimes we always get it wrong when it comes to service. We also set up Victoria Falls 365. Go on to the page. This is an information service. So basically what happens is that we basically just go around Victoria Falls right now, eating, drinking, everything, taking wonderful pictures and putting them onto the page. But what's most important is that at the background, we're actually doing a lot more analysis, feasibility studies, trying to see what kind of things the different players actually need in terms of help. And we will give them that consultancy either by doing social media classes. We're going to do things to do with systems, training, and that kind of thing. But I'll come back to that in a bit. But essentially, it's a social media service. It's a social messaging platform, tourism marketing. It's an advertising agency. So try to imagine that now Victoria Falls is now going to have an advertising agency dealing specifically with Victoria Falls. Now, I understand like ZTA is already there, but I'm looking at the fact that because I've got an advertising background, I do believe I've got a lot more innovative ideas to bring to the table. And so this is what we've brought about. We've got Feel Good Africa, which is basically a concept about talking about the African narrative through media. So essentially we've set up like an online web TV platform where we are developing content. It's starting off right now with comedy because I feel comedy is the best way of transmitting a Feel Good Africa narrative. So you'll see me do work like I'm curating shows for Haifa, bringing in stand-up comedians for Haifa, because I am trying to change the narrative of how comedians talk about Zimbabwe in their comedy. So if I bring them to Zimbabwe and give them a great experience, even if they talk about Zimbabwe badly, they're still also marketing the country. So I'm using that platform in order to grow the reach of Zimbabwe. So you'll find, for as long as Haifa allows me to keep bringing in comics, I'll keep actually bringing in different types of comics and changing their narrative, because they have quite a huge reach. The reach of the average, so say top 10 comedians in Africa is about 100 million people. So it's definitely not something worth ignoring. So the idea is that I'm going to be just, I've already started doing it, like compiling all the buyers of African comics, meeting up with them, doing interviews, recording, editing, and actually putting that online. But this is going to be important because I plan on having a comedy festival in Victoria Falls where international comics are going to be coming. So we're trying to do work to have the work that I do in comedy declared as kind of like a special economic zone where I can bring in talent without having to pay the high taxes that are involved in order to bring in the talent. But at the same time, I can contribute taxes according to the revenues that we actually make. So this is something that's going to be important for Zimbabwe. We've got this cool project that we call the Incubator. So the Incubator, if you notice, it's got my name in there, like Incubator. So this is where it's like a think tank. So I basically come up with ideas, come up with proposals, I do them as PowerPoints, and then I just put them away. Sometimes what happens is so weird. Every time I come up with ideas, God puts someone in my life, and then that idea is specific to them, and then I make a little bit of money from it, and then it's super awesome. But don't worry about me. It's not like... I want you to understand, it's not that I'm just giving away these ideas at a low price. What I'm doing is I'm building a lot of influence. There's a lot of people, you know, it's good to get influence from the general public, but the public are not influential. So I want you to notice, if you ask a lot of important people, if they know about me, they actually do. So I'd rather be influential to people who have influence over the public. So what you don't know behind the scenes, for example, is that I do a lot of work behind the scenes for a lot of corporates. I do work behind the scenes for a lot of artists that, you are influenced by, I do a lot of work behind the scenes because I have a bigger agenda in place of actually growing, let's say, the art sector or the corporates in Zimbabwe. I believe in changing through inspiration. So I don't really prescribe to the idea of just I don't care who's going to be in government, right? Anybody can be in government, but for as long as you're in government, I'm going to engage with you by giving you ideas. The more ideas I give you, the more likely I am to influence you to take a better course of action, because my ideas usually involve you making a lot more money, which means you're going to be less corrupt if you take my ideas. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So that's the basic idea. The next place, we're looking at setting up a tourism index. Now, for those of you who don't understand, like the stock exchange, you'll notice when you watch on the news, they'll have a mining index, or a gold index, or where they'll watch all of the counters that are registered on the stock exchange. And there's a calculation where they have a number that you then follow. So it would be good to have a tourism index. I know there's only a few tourism players, but I think we need to start having a tourism index. This is going to be very important because as it's being transmitted on all of the radio stations, investors out there can start listening to see whether or not our tourism sector is growing. And it's also there to encourage tourism players to consider raising financing, not by just getting other shareholders, but maybe listing publicly and then expanding their capacities around the country. Now, there's a lot of different products that I think are really good and easily franchisable across the country. For example, you've got the River Brewing Company, which I definitely think needs to consider the route of an IPO and listing on the stock exchange, not just maybe on the Zimbabwean stock exchange, but externally, because I think it can grow in Africa. Three Monkeys, the same thing. Pariah State, the same thing. We've already seen companies like Ncube grow across Africa. And one of the best ways of raising financing is obviously through having platforms like the stock exchange, where you can actually do an IPO, initial public offering, and then you can raise financing that way. I certainly believe Victoria Falls needs products. Let me give you an example of a product that I think Victoria Falls absolutely needs. Victoria Falls needs its own liquor, like an actual drink that foreigners definitely buy. Like when you go to Malawi, you buy Malawi gin. But when you come to Zimbabwe, there's no product that says Zimbabwe that you can buy, like in duty-free and stuff like that. And I certainly think you need to have products like that. For example, if you go to Zambezi House, they have their own brand of chili. Those are the kind of products that we think need to be in the supermarkets, where people say, I would like to see a situation where OK has 98% products that are developed in Victoria Falls, because there's a lot of tourists that are here. So let's come up with some gimmicky names of some chili that's there that people are like, oh, I tasted this on a pizza at Zambezi House. When I do the self-catering, I'm definitely going to buy it for a self-catering operation. This is going to be absolutely important to market Zimbabwe. When it comes to events, I think it's very important that Victoria Falls establishes a committee that deals with events. Now, when I say events, imagine if there was a committee of, say, 12 people, whatever it is, who were financed by the players in Victoria Falls to bring in every major event from around the world, to go and pitch, to bring in TED Global to Zimbabwe, to bring in the Under-19 World Cup to Victoria Falls, to bring in any tournament or event that a bid can be made for. Victoria Falls must bid to bring them into Victoria Falls. This is going to be absolutely important because it guarantees that every single month we don't have any dry seasons. Well, in fact, we don't have to worry about the low seasons in Victoria Falls, because right now, as it stands, Victoria Falls is currently has experienced some of its best figures in the longest time. So this is very important that we establish like a working committee that goes to these tourism expos and just pitches. Maybe I don't understand why we don't have a tourism expo that happens in Victoria Falls, like a global tourism expo for buyers and for tour agents. I don't understand why Miss Zimbabwe tourism is not held in Victoria Falls. I don't understand why we haven't tried to pitch to get TED TED Global. Yeah, I'm a TED fellow. I did a TED talk. So I don't know why we have never put together a committee that does that. The same way that we're talking about Bring Back Bulawayo. If there was a consortium that was there to say, listen, instead of complaining and whinging about things that Bulawayo is not getting here, people are taking jobs and whatever it is, let's take ownership. This is our Bulawayo. Why don't we have our own festivals? Why do we shoot down anyone who's big? Why is it that Bulawayo doesn't celebrate any of its luminaries? You want to kick them down when they become successful. I mean, I've had the press in Bulawayo tell me that Velo Nakal also Wago Bulawayo. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm from Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls has embraced me very nicely. I don't really need to care. If Bulawayo does want to invest in me, then that's fine. But the day that you try to invest in me when I've made it, trust me, guys, it's going to be very expensive. You could have gotten away with getting some cool stuff now for free, but now you want to wait until I'm famous. Good luck with that. Anyway, the next bit, which I'm really excited about, is about the idea of setting up a tourism academy. So what's happening in Zimbabwe is that, in Victoria Falls, is that we're getting an influx of people that are taking jobs and all of the locals aren't getting any work. Now, there's a lot of different thoughts where people are saying, well, maybe the locals don't have the right skills level and all of these things, and they're not justified at all. But let me tell you what might actually be happening. You see, Victoria Falls, everybody wants to work in Victoria Falls. Trust me, even I moved to Victoria Falls. So Victoria Falls is a rather competitive place. And so a lot of people are more hungry to come to Victoria Falls. And so from a local perspective, I figured setting up a tourism academy that works with the locals to make them ultra competitive. Now, listen, we might talk about quota systems and stuff like that, but I think it makes people, it doesn't help when you introduce a quota system. I don't want to know that I'm being booked for comedy because I'm Ndebele. I don't want that to happen. This is the reason when I came into the comedy industry, people were telling me that Bulawayo artists were being marginalized. You know, they always hire someone from Harare. They always do this. But I told myself when I was becoming a comedian, I was like, I am going to be the Ndebele comedian who is going not only run this industry, but I'm going to grow it. And I'm going to be at the top of it for the longest time. And nobody is going to be able to knock me off this particular pedestal. And I'm Ndebele, by the way. And I'm just going to prove to you that a Ndebele person can actually run things. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm running things, right? So with the Tourism Academy, what I want to do is I want to train that kind of mentality with the locals. Now imagine, I'm not saying set up a hotel school. I'm not saying set up the infrastructure. There's already hotels that have rooms. They've got rooms, they've got conference rooms, they've got restaurants and stuff like that. What if they all agreed to just give me an hour a week so that I can bring in some young people to get trained? I just bring in some experts, I find an NGO who's going to fund it, or maybe I do an event with one of the chefs, but then I say, listen, I'll pay you for the one event. Maybe you do a cook-off at Zambezi House where you're being paid, but as part of your corporate social responsibility, you train a number of youngsters in the area of human resources or whatever skill that you have, entertainment, conservation, that kind of thing, storytelling. I want to make sure that the locals in Victoria Falls are giving this resource free of charge, and it makes them more competitive so that the local companies or all of the companies that are here will only want to work with Victoria Falls based people. Okay, the next bit that we're talking about is going to be like real estate. So one of the things that I find very interesting is that people come to Victoria Falls, but they don't get an experience of Africa. And so you've got a lot of these townships. And what I want to do is I want to obviously balance working with city council and working with the public to train people how to convert their township houses into Airbnbs. And also make sure that they're also contributing in terms of taxes, establishment of shebeens, markets, villages where people can experience the authentic Zimbabwe, and also encourage domestic tourism by coming up with initiatives to say, for all of the residents that are paying their rates, for example, they must get free tickets to go and see the Victoria Falls. Or if they introduce a relative to Victoria Falls, the locals mustn't pay. Where real estate is concerned, want to collect up all of the real estate and have them all on the one website. Imagine if the whole of Chino Timber becomes one big hotel. That means like people can actually come and stay and have the capacity. Imagine like one concierge, one reception, but 10,000 houses. Imagine the kind of capacity that you would actually have that you can harness in people's houses. All they need is like just a spare room, or you can show them how the spare room can be used. They don't have to use it all the time, but every time, let's say for example, there's older people who actually have their kids going off to school and stuff like that. Maybe they can earn a little bit of extra money. There are people in the diaspora who want to fix up their houses. You don't have to turn it into a hotel. There's easy things that I can teach you that you can turn it into a township tourism actual hub. The next point is something that I'm very passionate about, which is Camp Feel Good. This is like my kind of youth initiative. The problem that's happening with Zimbabwe today, why we're ending up with, and I have to call some people out, you know, why we end up with a lot of these celebrities like your Olindas, your Chiedzas and stuff like that, is a failing of us in society of inspiring our kids to aspire to something that is much more morally correct. I don't have a problem with adult entertainment. Listen, you're quite free to do what you want to do. You can cry all you want on social media and get a following and use that to make yourself some money. But I'm talking about actually giving kids the right tools that they need in life. Positive thinking, working as teams, respecting your elders, understanding hierarchy. A lot of these kids don't understand that sometimes you can work from the bottom. Like, I worked as a waiter in England. I loved working as a waiter. I worked as a waiter. People don't understand how I get these opportunities. I get in for free, but I come out with money. Do you understand what I'm saying? And people need to understand this. So at the end of the day, Camp Feel Good is there as a place for, instead of bringing these kids to just do, these tours that they have, I'll just set up like a group of young people to teach young people and inspire them to do good through this particular camp. So it's youth development, training, education, inspiration, and motivation. So essentially, this is my Victoria Falls Tourism Manifesto. So the way that I've set it up, this is kind of like my working cabinet. It's like my working ministries as it is. And this is exactly how you will see me operate. I don't need to run for office. What I've actually realized is a problem with our politicians is that they say I'm going to do X, Y, Z when I'm in power. But listen, I took stand-up comedy to 37 cities around the world. 37 cities under Robert Mugabe's rule. So I'm telling you that no politician can try and convince me that you cannot effect positive change in the country or in the lives of people unless you are in office. You can do a lot of things. I don't even have a budget. The government doesn't give me any money. I don't have any money. Like, even the president doesn't even know who I am. The opposition leaders don't even know who I am. Nobody knows who I am. But I am doing a lot of great work because I've realized that the power is actually in my hands. I've declared myself a tourism ambassador. In fact, I'm no longer a tourism ambassador, guys. I am now a brand ambassador for Zimbabwe. So I represent every single facet of Zimbabwe. Like, you're going to see me going around the country, inspiring farmers and saying, listen, let us set up coaching clinics at your farms, convert farms into classes. The same model that I'm doing for the tourism industry here can be applied to mining towns. It can be applied to agricultural towns. It can be applied to tech hubs. So we're actually trying to identify and see which kind of cities will be good for youngsters in the tech industry, where we can start saying engineers can come and live here. We can get investors to put containers where these youngsters can take a gap year and work for free, creating apps and solutions for the country. And then eventually they can actually get share options in those particular products and actually realize revenue from there. So I just want to look at some people who have asked to be put online. I would just recommend, I'm just going to allow you to just say a few words and then I can, for example, oh, sorry, it doesn't allow me as a moderator to add you. So let's see if there's any questions that people are asking. Let me just read some comments. Duchess Cleo says, Bonnie, let's go to Falls in December. Please, Duchess Cleo, we need you in Victoria Falls. We also need an adult shop in Victoria Falls, by the way. I know I'm going to be shot by a lot of the players, but I think we need an adult shop, certainly, and adult entertainment in Victoria Falls. Vonnie, thank you for saying brilliant stuff. Shingi, Pule, thank you so much. How are you doing? Tembalani Ndlovu, hello. Yes, please, thank you. If there's a way of this can be downloaded and shared outside of the group, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm trying to see if there's any questions here. I'm not seeing any questions. You guys are being very complimentary. Thank you. Really appreciate you. Dennis says, never sell out location, mate, never. Let's see. Sending some shout outs to people here. Nobutle, how are you doing? Willard, Lois, Tole, how are you doing? Melissa, Budding, Vaka, Chijitsani, how are you doing as well? Mkululi, yeah, I know we're talking about the point about they missed the color for corruption, but that's also a funny joke, by the way, that I'd like to use at some point. Okay, so it looks like I don't have any questions. Okay, Duchess Cleo is asking, when is the festival? Okay, so what we've done is we've set up a lot of proposals for the festival. So Haifa is happening 1 to 6 May. That's happening in Harare. I'm currently trying to discuss with Haifa the possibility of them doing a spin-off festival here in Victoria Falls. So we're looking at setting up some dates. But I understand there's a jazz festival coming to Victoria Falls. There's... we're doing a food festival at some point. We don't have any dates for that. There's a film festival that's coming to Victoria Falls as well. So we want to really drive the whole idea of festivals. Plus, we're also trying to see how we can get the community leaders to do a traditional like festival, almost like a march where all of the tribes, Nambia, the Tonga, whatever it is, can walk down the streets, almost like the Reed dance in Swaziland. We can actually have that festival where down the streets people are just dancing in their traditional gear, not bringing Brazilians to dance for us, but I think where all of the different traditions in Africa can be celebrated. It would be great to get that happen in Africa Day, where all the traditional dancers just come to Africa, descend on Africa, and just come and dance for us on the streets. I think that would be fantastic. Willard, thank you for saying I've always longed for these types of Facebook Lives. Thank you again, Vonnie. Why can't we? Yeah, so essentially, you see, what I'm trying to just show you is that your future is in your hands. So people might see me talk about the Zimbabwe is open for business and stuff like that. Like I said, I just take all the positives and I run with the positives. So whatever positives I get from anywhere, those are the kind of things that I want to run with. The reason why I like the whole mantra of Zimbabwe is open for business is that I can say Zimbabwe is open for business. I am open for business. So I am just going out there looking for investment, looking for opportunity, looking for people to invest in me. I don't want these opportunities to just be taken by foreigners. So the politicians can do what they are doing, the deals, they can go and stitch them together. But I want to be that guy who moves the opposite direction. He's not going to be going around complaining only on social media. Because sometimes you'll find when I'm complaining on social media, it's because I'm trying to tease out information to see, is there someone who's going to say something sensible to me that I can put into action at the end of the day? Because all of these things that I've shown you on this particular manifesto that I've drawn for you guys, right? That I've drawn for you guys has actually come most of your complaints on social media. So I hear you complaining, and then I come up with projects, and then these projects are going to look after me, my family, my communities, and stuff like that. So it's really up to you. Do you want to be a business person, or do you just want to be a customer? Because today I was speaking to the business person, so the business person in you. If you want to be a business person, you can be a business person. If you want to be a customer, you can be a customer and spend your money on the business people who pay attention to knowledge and can use it. They can use it to better themselves. So people might say, Carl, you're doing too many things. Listen, the president does a lot of things. So what's wrong with doing a lot of things? You know, I have the brain that has the capability of looking at chaos and putting it together into a plan. So I look at myself as people who say to me, Carl, you do too much, are like, they don't understand the difference between a cake and an oven. So I'll explain to you. A cake is usually of a particular description. Strawberry cake, chocolate cake, vanilla cake. It's described and known by its one thing or its one flavor. It's normally consumed by a particular time and normally expires and is replaced by another cake. Whereas an oven is a tool that can make cakes, roast meat, it can even boil water, and it can even warm your house. An oven is a tool, and I am an oven. So that's why you find me doing a lot of different things, because I have understood what exactly I am. Most people are just cakes, so they see themselves as just one thing. I was created by God. You see, I'm a born-again Christian, so I believe in God. God created us in his image. So God created us to create. So I'll give you an example. I was in Botswana and I was homeless. And I used to ask God the question, like, why am I in this position? Then God says, I've brought you to a place that's dark and void. Because I want your spirit to hover over the surface of the deep. And I want you to experience what I experienced the day that I said, let there be light. Imagine how powerful that is. That God tells me that he wants me to call things into existence. And it's so funny. Everything I've called into existence has happened. You know, when I said I wanted to travel to 37 cities, God took me to 37 cities. When I said that I want to be the biggest Zimbabwean stand-up comedian in the world, I am the biggest Zimbabwean stand-up comedian in the world. I don't care what your opinions are about it. Go around the world and ask, which Zimbabwean comedians do you know? The survey will show me. I wanted to be a celebrity chef. I'm a celebrity chef. I wanted to cook fantastic food every day. I cook fantastic food every day. I wanted to live in Victoria Falls. I am here in Victoria Falls. I want you to understand that sometimes we don't call things into existence because the only thing you're calling into existence is complaints. So I'm calling into existence that I'm open for business. I'm not saying I'm a supporter of a particular party. I'm saying I am open for business. I'm calling into existence that I am an ecosystem. I am an economy. I want you to understand that even me moving to Victoria Falls, I realize I am an economy. Because of me, when I have shows, people come and they buy alcohol in restaurants. People travel to countries to come and watch me perform. People come to discuss with me business and enterprise ideas. I am an economy. I am Zimbabwe. So I don't look at Zimbabwe as a place. I am Zimbabwe. I am the mineral resources. I am the vegetation. I am the struggle. I am the people. I am the peace. I am the tradition. I am the Zimbabwean bird. I am this economy. I am the bond note or the US dollar. I'm the one-to-one. I am everything. But I determine for my future how that operates in my life. And that is the thing that will always separate me from another Zimbabwean. So like I said, I am speaking only to the Zimbabwean that understands what I'm talking about. Like, you can argue with me. If you're arguing with me, you might be a customer. So I don't really need to argue with you because I'm going to create a product that you're going to buy. In fact, I'm even going to create a book that you're going to buy. Because like right now, you may not be listening to my advice, but let me tell you something. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to make a lot of money. And then I'm going to produce a book that the very people that argued with me are going to buy to try and figure out how I got there. That's all I'm saying. So thank you guys so much. I really want to thank you. Give more. Carl, I'm already embracing you for the minutes that I have listened to you. I want to be associated with you. Thank you so much. Vote for me. Vote for Carl. Carl for president. I'm 39, so I can't run. Is there any... Give More says, I think you are my brother. Yeah, I think you are my brother as well. I think you are my brother who always puts money into my account and says, hey, my brother, I want to support you. Umalume Tamu Oga Kwai, Guta guys, let's give him ama hearts and unigile ama hearts lama likes. Ama likes are corner like Mama Gold likes Lama Gold hearts. And yes, lots of hearts, thank you. I like the way that you have packaged your session, simple, straight to the point, no jargon. Thank you so much, Tamu. Ulalele. Amazing guy. Thank you, Nobuhle. I can listen to Carl without actually commenting because he's always firing thoughts to process. Thank you so much, Marcy. So guys, come to Victoria Falls. This is the new Zimbabwe. Let's get into a new type of thinking. The government has nothing to do with your business. But your business has everything to do with the government, because the government obviously is going to make taxes the more productive that you are. But I want you to understand that what they are doing has nothing to do with your destiny. You can forge your own destiny. You can be amazing. I want you to go up and be amazing. Temba Ndlovu, meet me in Zimbabwe. I want you to meet me in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, guys. I think I will sign out. Guys, if there's any other questions, I'm going to answer them later on. I think that's... oh, Marcy, you're saying, I'm using a lot of seafood. Where's that coming from? There's a company that's called Kutenga that's in South Africa. It's Zimbabwean run. They actually deliver the seafood, so it comes into Zimbabwe. In fact, it's significantly cheaper than buying it in, say, a restaurant or buying it in a supermarket. So I was working on a seafood component of my book. So I bought quite a lot of seafood that I got, and we got to invite a lot of people to eat the food at home, which was super awesome. Please mention the luxury train for $50 from Bulawayo. Okay, so those of you who might have been following might have noticed that I've been on the NRZ trains. What I noticed, because I grew up on the NRZ trains, it has both good and bad memories for me. But what I realized is that if you're coming to Victoria Falls, you're obviously not a person who's going to be in a hurry. The train normally takes about, I think, 10.5 hours. The regular train is better than traveling by bus, because on the bus, you don't really have a toilet on board. The NRZ trains have a toilet. Sometimes their carriages don't have water in them, but it has kind of, the toilet is like a pit latrine. But if you notice, the toilet stops from Bulawayo to Victoria Falls are really terrible. So being on a train is much better. 2, you're sitting with lots of leg room. 3, you get to bring your cooler box, have your drinks, play cards, you know, chill out with your friends. I think it's the most amazing thing. I treat it like I'm staying in a hotel overnight coming from Bulawayo, and then I arrive in Victoria Falls at 10 o'clock. Do you understand what I'm saying? They also have bedding, which is still fantastic. That's the normal train. Now, NRZ told me about this other train, right? So this other train kind of works out at about $50 return, but you have to book the whole train. So what we're trying to do as Victoria Falls 365, we're trying to get 26 people to book the train. So you can book the train yourself, or you can book for your relatives. That train has a shower, it's got a dining cart and stuff like that. There's a package for my birthday, which is going to be, just to be on the train alone, is going to cost like $100 US dollars, but you also get a tour of Victoria Falls. You get to chill with me on my birthday. The food isn't included, unfortunately, in that. And then there'll be one activity for $100. So we need 26 people to book on Victoria Falls 365. That's for 25 May, which is Africa Day, which is my 39th birthday. It's going to be super awesome. Nkululu Ndlovu, thank you so much for saying inspirational, brilliant manifesto. Thank you so much. So, in other words, also, the reason why I decided to name this a manifesto is I also got very sick and tired of listening to politicians just talking about things that they are going to do but not explaining how. I'm more of an executioner than anything else. So when I tell you that I'm doing something, I'll literally tell you exactly how it's going to work out. And normally a lot of the times you're going to see me execute. I normally work on an 80% efficiency on the ideas that I talk about. So sometimes I'll say at the beginning of the year, there's 100 things that I'm going to do. By the end of the year, I normally achieve about 80 of those things, which is still an A at school. So that's basically how I look at things. Lauren Moyo, thank you, Carl. You're really encouraging us young people. Thank you so much, Lauren. Situle Nicole Chuma, well done. Thank you. Monica, how are you doing? Nobuhle, what's up? Virginia, how are you doing? Cool. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope I get an opportunity to also be on Bring Back Bulawayo some other time to share some more ideas. It's nice to be on the hub to share ideas. I think this is a good platform. These ideas are transferable to places like Bulawayo. I don't believe Bulawayo should be waiting on the government to do things for us. I think there's a lot of things that we can take into our own hands. And let's stop using the excuse that, but they didn't let us the last time. Listen. Even me as a comedian, they didn't let me do a lot of things. But here I am. I'm the biggest comic. So what's your point? That's all I'm saying. So, yeah. So, guys, good night, guys. We'll talk later. Temba Ndlovu, we're still going to talk. I need to get that song from you because I think that should be my jam on our radio show. And please check us out on Breeze FM. I've got a morning show, which is 6 to 10. AM. It's called Morning or Tunya. Go like our page on Facebook, Morning or Tunya, which is the morning that thunders. Go and like our page. We're going to be putting up podcasts where a lot of these ideas are going to be unpacked. We're interviewing people. We're interrogating facts. We're asking questions. We believe that our generation needs to be informed. Those that choose to be informed, please jump on our bandwagon. Those who don't want to be informed, please also become our customers, because you're going to give us a lot of money at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Vonnie McGinley, with the rest of your team at Bring Back Bulawayo. It's been such a pleasure being with you guys tonight. My name is Ncube.